If you're hiding something, it always comes out. Those words rang in Clara's head the night she found the first clue. It was late, well past midnight, and she was cleaning Julian's car after he had come home from yet another business trip. He always said Dallas. Always Dallas. But in the glove compartment, tucked beneath a pile of gas receipts and gum wrappers, she saw something that didn't belong. A small, crumpled piece of paper. Clara smoothed it out with trembling fingers. It was a restaurant receipt. San Antonio, not Dallas. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. A date for 2. Her heart dropped. Julian had looked her in the eyes just hours before and said, "Traffic from Dallas was horrible. I almost didn't make it back in time." And Clara, trusting, tired Clara, had believed him. But now, staring at the receipt glowing under the dome light, she felt something ugly stir inside her chest. Why would he lie? She whispered to herself. Why San Antonio? The receipt wasn't proof of anything yet. Maybe it was work. Maybe he grabbed dinner with a client. But the thought didn't sit right. Something was off. She folded the receipt carefully and slid it into her apron pocket. That night, sleep refused to come. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind filling with images she didn't want to see. Julian sitting across from another woman, smiling in that way he once smiled at her. The next morning, Clara decided not to confront him. Not yet. She wanted answers, not excuses. Clara ran a bakery in town, a cozy little shop called Sweet Dawn. It had been her dream since she was a girl, and she had built it from the ground up. Cinnamon rolls, chocolate croissants, pies that melted in your mouth. People lined up outside the door before sunrise. Julian used to love the bakery. Used to help her roll dough, laugh when flour dusted her cheeks, brag to friends that his wife was the best baker in Texas. But lately he barely came by. He claimed work was too demanding. Late nights, long trips, projects only he could handle. And when he did come home, he smelled faintly of cologne Clara didn't recognize. She brushed off her doubts until the day she found the second clue. It was a bright Saturday morning. Clara decided to surprise Julian by washing his car. She hummed as she gathered the cleaning supplies, but her humming stopped when she opened the side door pocket. There, tucked inside, was a small tube of lubricant. Her hands froze. Clara wasn't naive. She knew what it was for. But the truth stung deeper because she and Julian hadn't used anything like that in months. Maybe longer. Her stomach churned. She held the tube, as if it were poisonous. Then, with a long, shaky breath, she dropped it back where she found it, careful not to disturb the scene. Her chest felt heavy, but her mind whispered, "Not proof yet. Not enough." That afternoon, Clara tried to act normal. She baked cookies with her son, Daniel, who was home for the weekend. Daniel was married to Allison, a bright young woman who had become like a daughter to Clara. But that day, Clara noticed something strange. When Julian entered the kitchen, Allison's eyes flickered to him. Just for a second. A glance too sharp, too quick. And Julian's lips tugged into a faint smile, not the kind he gave his wife, but the kind a man gives when he shares a secret. Clara's stomach twisted again. No. Not her. Please, God, not Allison. The thought was so monstrous that Clara shook it away. She scolded herself for even imagining it. Allison was family. Family. But the whisper of betrayal had already begun, crawling into Clara's bones. A week later, Clara found the third clue. Julian had left his laptop open on the kitchen table, something he rarely did. She wasn't the snooping type, but her heart urged her forward. There it was. An email. Subject, "Miss you, Dad." Her breath hitched. She clicked. It wasn't from Daniel. It wasn't from a colleague. It was from Allison. The words were brief, but sharp as glass. "Can't wait for the next business trip. Last time was perfect. Don't make me wait too long, Dad." Clara's hands shook so hard, she nearly dropped the laptop. The room spun. Her daughter-in-law. Her husband. Her world cracked open like a broken eggshell. For hours, Clara sat at the kitchen table, the email burned into her mind. Tears stung her eyes, but anger kept them from falling. She thought of Daniel, her sweet boy, so loyal, so hardworking. He adored Allison. He trusted his father. If he ever knew, it would destroy him. Clara pressed her fists into her lap and whispered, "I need proof. Real proof." The whisper had become a scream. And Clara, though broken, made a silent vow. She would not be the fool in this story. She would watch. She would wait. And, when the time came, she would strike. That night, Clara lay beside Julian in bed. He slept soundly, his breathing slow and steady. She stared at him, her heart pounding with every inhale. In the dark, she whispered, "I know." Julian stirred, but didn't wake. Clara closed her eyes. Her plan was already forming. The hunt had begun. And this, dear listener, was just the beginning. Clara had only scratched the surface of her husband's darkest betrayal. What she uncovered next would shatter her heart and ignite a fire for revenge you'll never forget. Clara woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a storm in her chest. The email from Allison replayed in her head like a broken record. "Miss you, Dad." The words gnawed at her. Julian, her husband of 23 years. Allison, her daughter-in-law, the woman she had welcomed like her own. If she confronted them now, they would deny it. They would twist her words, call her paranoid, make her feel crazy. No, Clara knew she needed something stronger than suspicion. She needed proof. So, she became what she had never been before. A detective. The first step was simple. She bought a small notebook and began writing everything down. Dates. Times. Details. The nights Julian claimed Dallas. The mornings Allison arrived late at Daniel's house with flimsy excuses. Clara's list grew. Patterns appeared. But her notebook wasn't enough. She needed eyes where she couldn't be. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Clara slipped into her bakery's office and searched online for a private investigator. Her hands shook as she typed. "Infidelity investigations near me." The first result was a woman named Detective Mara Hayes. Reviews called her tough, discreet, and relentless. Clara dialed. Mara's voice was sharp and professional. "Tell me what you suspect." Clara hesitated, shame rising in her throat. But then she spilled everything: Julian, Allison, the emails, the lube, the receipt. There was silence on the line. Then Mara said, "I'll take the case. But you need to be ready for the truth. Whatever it is." Clara's voice trembled. "I already know the truth. I just need to see it." Within days, Mara delivered. Photos. Dozens of them. Clara sat in her car in the bakery's parking lot, staring at the envelope Mara handed her. Her heart screamed, "Don't look," but her fingers pulled out the photographs anyway. There was Julian, her Julian, standing on a hotel balcony. And beside him, Allison. Her hands clutched his arm as they laughed. In another photo, their lips touched. Clara's vision blurred. She flipped through the images, each one slicing her deeper. Julian's hand on Allison's waist. Allison resting her head on his shoulder. Their bodies too close, too comfortable. Mara's voice cut through her haze. This wasn't a one-time mistake. They've been meeting for weeks, maybe months. Clara pressed the photos to her chest and fought to breathe. Her bakery, her son, her marriage, everything she had built, was hanging by a thread. But Mara wasn't finished. She handed Clara a USB stick. Videos. Hotel cameras. And this, she placed a small black device in Clara's hand, is a recorder. Hide it in your house. You'll hear the things they don't want you to know. That night, Clara sat alone in her kitchen, staring at the recorder. Her fingers traced its edges. Planting it felt wrong, like crossing a line she couldn't return from. But then she remembered Allison's smile at Julian. The email. The photos. And Clara's doubt hardened into resolve. She hid the recorder behind a flower vase in the living room. Days later, Clara listened. Her body shook as Julian's voice filled the tiny speaker. "Allison, we just need a little more time. Clara won't suspect a thing." Then Allison's voice, soft, cruel, mocking. "Oh, please. She's too busy baking pies to notice. Once the papers are signed, that bakery will be ours. We'll sell it, split the money, and she'll be left with nothing." Clara covered her mouth to keep from screaming. They weren't just betraying her with love. They were plotting to steal everything she owned. Her bakery, her dream, her life. The days that followed were torture. Clara had to face them both. Julian pretending to be a loving husband, Allison hugging her like nothing was wrong. Clara smiled back, her face a mask, while her heart bled inside. But the mask gave her time. And with time came a plan. At night, Clara sat in her office, listening to more recordings. She filled her notebook with their words. "We'll move the money into my account first," Julian whispered in one recording. "All she cares about is Daniel," Allison sneered in another. "She won't see it coming." Each line was a knife. But Clara didn't cry anymore. She sharpened those knives into weapons. She thought of Daniel, his smile, his kindness, his trust. He could never know the full ugliness. Not yet. She would carry this burden alone for now. But one day soon, everyone would see Julian and Allison for what they truly were. One evening, Mara met Clara at the bakery after closing. "You have enough evidence to burn them both," Mara said, sliding a folder across the table. "Emails, photos, recordings. The law will be on your side." Clara touched the folder but didn't open it. Her eyes were steady. "The law isn't enough. They need to feel what I feel. They need to know humiliation." Mara raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" Clara's lips curved into the faintest, coldest smile. "Something they'll never forget." That night, Clara crept into the garage, where Julian kept his private stash of toiletries in a black duffel bag. Her fingers closed around the familiar tube of lubricant. She stared at it for a long time. Then she reached into her own box of supplies, a box no one touched but her. Inside, nestled between cleaning rags and paint cans, was a bottle of industrial-strength glue. Clara unscrewed the cap, her hands steady now. And as she squeezed the thick glue into the empty lube tube, her whisper was calm, almost tender. "Let's see how close you two really are." Clara now had all the proof she needed, photos, recordings, and a plan that would turn her husband's betrayal into a public spectacle. But revenge is a dangerous game. And when the trap is set, there's no going back. The glue sat hidden in Julian's duffel bag, disguised as a simple tube of lubricant. Clara had placed it back so carefully that not even the sharpest eyes could notice. It was ready. But Clara wasn't finished. Proof alone wasn't enough. She wanted justice. She wanted humiliation. She wanted them both to feel the weight of betrayal pressed against their skin until it burned. And so, the trap began to take shape. Clara had always been good at planning. Her bakery had taught her discipline, timing, precision. A pie baked 1 minute too long could burn. A plan executed too soon could collapse. She mapped it all out in her notebook, the same one where she had written down every lie. Step 1. Collect final recordings. Step 2. Plant smoke trap. Step 3. Wait for the fire to draw the neighbors. Step 4. Watch Julian and Allison get exposed. She rehearsed it over and over in her head, her heart pounding like a war drum. The first step was simple. Clara set the recorder again in the living room, this time leaving the house under the excuse of late-night bakery prep. Hours later, she returned and played the tape. The voices sent chills down her spine. "Julian, she's so gullible. I told her I might be gone all weekend for a conference. She believed me." Allison, laughing, "Perfect. That means we can meet here tomorrow night. No interruptions. And after, well, maybe it's time we start moving forward with the plan." Julian, "The bakery will sell for at least 200 grand. Once Clara signs, we're free."
Allison,
"I can't wait until she's out of the picture." The recording cut off, but Clara had heard enough. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers dug into the table. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tomorrow it ends." The next morning, Clara prepared like she would for a wedding cake. Every detail had to be perfect. She set up a small device in the kitchen, one she had borrowed from Mara's friend who worked in fire safety. A smoke trap. It would release a controlled puff of smoke, enough to trigger the alarm but not enough to cause real harm. Neighbors would rush out. Firefighters would be called. And in the middle of it all, Julian and Allison would be trapped. Literally. Clara smiled at the thought. That evening, she left the house quietly, telling Julian she had an overnight bread order at the bakery. He kissed her cheek, the same lips that had touched Allison, and said, "Don't work too hard." Clara didn't flinch. She simply nodded and walked out, her face unreadable. But instead of going to the bakery, she parked her car a few streets away and circled back on foot. From a distance, she watched her own house, the windows glowing warm against the night. She didn't have to wait long. Allison's car pulled into the driveway. Clara's chest tightened as she saw her daughter-in-law slip inside, her hair loose, her body dressed in something too casual, too intimate. Clara's fists clenched, but she didn't move. Not yet. The trap needed time. Minutes turned into an hour. Then came the sound she had been waiting for, the shrill screech of her smoke alarm. The trap had sprung. Lights flicked on across the street. Neighbors poured out in robes and slippers, whispering, pointing. Someone dialed 911. Clara's heart raced as a fire truck turned onto the block, red lights flashing, siren wailing. The firefighters jumped out, hoses ready, axes in hand. They rushed into the house. And then, just as Clara had imagined, came the shout. "Oh my God!" One of the men's voices echoed. They're stuck." The crowd gasped. Clara pushed forward, playing her part as the worried wife. Her voice trembled as she called out, "What's happening? Is my husband okay?" The firefighter looked at her, then back at the house. His face was a mix of shock and pity. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." And there, in the middle of her living room, was the sight she would never forget. Julian and Allison, naked, tangled, glued together. Their faces twisted in agony and shame. Their hands clawed, their bodies pressed, but no amount of struggling could separate them. The firefighters shouted orders, scrambling for solvents, their gloves sticky from failed attempts. One of them muttered under his breath, "Never seen anything like this." The neighbors stared through the open doorway, whispers spreading like wildfire. Clara pressed her hand to her chest, tears filling her eyes, but not from sadness. This was justice. This was humiliation. Julian's face turned red as he screamed at the firefighters, "Get us out of here. Now." Allison sobbed, hiding her face against his chest. "It hurts. Please make it stop." But no one pitied them. Phones were out. Cameras clicked. Videos rolled. The whole neighborhood was watching. Clara turned her head just enough so they wouldn't see the small smile tugging at her lips. It took nearly an hour for the firefighters to pry them apart with chemical solvents, their bodies raw and red. By then, the damage was already done. The whispers had turned into laughter, the laughter into gossip. And Clara knew that by sunrise, the entire town would know the story. Julian, Allison, glued together like animals. And Clara, the poor betrayed wife. Except she wasn't the victim anymore. She was the architect. As the firefighters carried Julian and Allison out under blankets, Clara caught Mara's eye. The detective stood at the edge of the crowd, her lips curved in the faintest smirk. "Evidence collected?" Clara whispered as she passed. Mara patted her phone. Every second. Audio, video. Even their little meltdown. Clara exhaled, her heart steady for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow would bring chaos. Lawyers. Papers. More tears from Daniel. But tonight, as the crowd buzzed and Julian hung his head in shame, Clara felt powerful. Her trap had worked. And it was only the beginning. The night of the fire, Clara hardly slept. Not because of guilt, no, that ship had sailed long ago, but because of the rush of it all. The sirens, the gasps, the cameras flashing, Julian and Allison glued together in shame. It had been everything she imagined. But morning brought silence. And with silence came consequences. By noon, the story had already spread. Clara's phone buzzed nonstop with texts from friends, neighbors, even old classmates she hadn't heard from in years. "Clara, are you okay? I can't believe Julian did this to you. We're all on your side." Her bakery, Sweet Dawn, was flooded with customers, not for pastries, but for gossip. People lined up, not just for cinnamon rolls, but for a glimpse of the woman who had just taken down a cheating husband and a traitorous daughter-in-law. Clara smiled politely, poured coffee, and let them whisper. Every bite of her pie now tasted like victory. Daniel, though, was another story. He stormed into the bakery that afternoon, his face pale, his voice shaking. "Mom, tell me it's not true." Clara's chest tightened. She reached across the counter, squeezing his hand. "Sit down, sweetheart." Daniel sat, his eyes wide, like a boy lost in a storm. Clara swallowed hard. This was the moment she dreaded. "It's true," she said softly. "Your father and Allison, they've been together for months. I found the proof. I couldn't let it go on." Daniel's face crumpled. "Allison? My wife. And Dad." His hands shook as he pressed them to his head. How could they do this to me? To us?" Clara pulled him close, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, baby. I tried to protect you, but you needed to know the truth." For a long time, Daniel cried against her shoulder, and Clara, though shattered inside, held him tight, whispering, "We'll get through this. Together." The divorce papers came swiftly. Clara filed within a week, armed with Mara's evidence. Emails, recordings, photos. Julian couldn't deny any of it. In court, Julian tried to put on a show of regret. He mumbled apologies, begged Clara not to ruin him financially, pleaded for mercy. Clara didn't flinch. She handed the judge her folder of evidence. She explained how Julian had plotted to sell her bakery, how Allison had mocked her, how the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated theft. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. The bakery was hers. The house was hers. Julian left with nothing but humiliation and a ruined reputation. Clara signed the papers with steady hands. Her marriage was over, but her dignity was intact. As for Allison, Daniel wasted no time. He packed her bags himself and threw them on the lawn. She begged, she cried, she swore it had been a mistake. But Daniel's eyes were cold when he said, "You betrayed my family. You betrayed me. Get out." Neighbors watched as Allison stumbled into her car, her face streaked with tears. Once, she had been the pretty daughter-in-law everyone admired. Now, she was the punchline of the town's cruelest joke. Clara stood at the window, watching Allison drive away. And though her heart ached for Daniel, she felt no pity for the girl who had tried to steal everything. Weeks passed. The scandal died down, but its shadow lingered. Whenever Julian walked through town, whispers followed him like ghosts. He stopped showing his face at the grocery store, at church, anywhere people gathered. Allison moved 2 towns over, chasing a new job, but the rumors followed her too. People remembered. People always remembered. But Clara thrived. Sweet Dawn doubled its business. Customers who barely noticed her before now called her brave, strong, an inspiration. Women hugged her in the street. Men tipped extra, saying, "Good for you, Clara. Good for you." Her bakery smelled sweeter than ever. At home, Clara rebuilt her world piece by piece. She bought new curtains, painted the living room walls a soft yellow, planted roses in the front yard. Every change was a reminder. This is mine. I took it back. On Sundays, she joined a cooking club at church. She laughed with other women, traded recipes, even taught them how to make her famous pecan pie. For the first time in years, Clara felt light. Daniel struggled for a while. Some nights, he called Clara, his voice cracked with pain. "How do I move on, Mom? How do I trust again?" Clara always answered the same way. "One day at a time, sweetheart. Your heart will heal. You're stronger than you think." And slowly, Daniel began to believe her. He visited the bakery often, helping Clara with deliveries, fixing shelves, sharing quiet meals at the counter. Their bond, once strained by Julian's secrets, grew stronger than ever. In the ruins of betrayal, they had found each other again. One evening, Clara locked up the bakery and stood outside, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and pink. The smell of fresh bread clung to her clothes, the chatter of happy customers still ringing in her ears. She closed her eyes and breathed deep. Julian was gone. Allison was gone. But Clara remained, stronger, wiser, unbroken. The betrayal had been brutal, but it hadn't destroyed her. It had rebuilt her. And so, as the stars flickered into the sky, Clara whispered to herself, "I am free. I am enough. And I will rise again." Her bakery lights glowed behind her, a beacon in the night. Sweet dawn, her dream, her refuge, her victory. A symbol of resilience. A promise of new beginnings. And that's how Clara turned heartbreak into power. Betrayed by her husband and daughter-in-law, she rose from the ashes with courage, dignity, and a fire that no betrayal could ever put out. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more unbelievable stories of strength and revenge. Because sometimes the sweetest victory is starting again.